Welcome to Tech Habit Weekly. This is episode 1 of the podcast that's for you guys out there that have a habit of talking tech. I have a huge habit of that. And if you don't know me, right down there, Bob Roche, I'm at youtube.com/CPUKid00. I do tons of Hackintosh content, and honestly, podcasting is something that I've really wanted to get into for a long time. If you guys have stuck around with me since I was in 10th grade years ago, this is something that I tried doing, but I had limited resources at the time and kind of just crashed and burned. I lost interest because of it, and now ever since, I've been watching Twit ever since then, and they've always kind of fascinated me in how podcasting works, how fluent they are at it, how good it is, and I've always been into that sort of content. So this is going to be a podcast. It's kind of going to be something like a Twitch show or a TNT show in that it's very user interactive. We have a live chat room, RocheTechnology.com/live. The chat room is right there. I can see you guys. I also have a forum, RocheTechnology.com/forum, and that's going to be a big part of this podcast. If you go to the forums now, you'll see an interactive section, and you guys can actually submit stories to me that, if I find them relevant or find them interesting, then, we're free to talk about those. So being able to submit, articles or videos to me that we can all talk about, I think will create a pretty cool experience. And so with that said, today we don't have that many topics, but because of the depth of these topics, I think we can have a lot of good content out there. The first one is going to be the launch of 10.8.4, which just happened today. So we kind of just slipped that in there. The next is going to be the launch of Haswell and the Z87 motherboards, then some of the new features that those include, why you may want to wait or upgrade. And also, the last thing we're going to be talking about is WWDC 2013, my predictions, my expectations, what I think that we will and won't see and why. And like I said, feel free to chime in the chat room if you guys would like. This is being recorded. It will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, so if you guys want to watch it after the fact, then no problem there. But definitely feel free to come by live because I think it's a more fun experience. You guys can get your opinions in the chat room, and overall, watch the live fails happen. So with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Today is June the 4th, and Apple released 10.8.4 today. Now, personally, I didn't see this coming at all. I thought this was going to be something that Apple would completely hold off on until WWDC, which is next week, June 10th, I believe. Yeah, June 10th. And the reason I thought that is because, and I'll get a little bit more into this later, but I think Apple is going to be releasing some new hardware at WWDC in terms of Macs. And so I figured they would kind of just ship all that on the same day, but apparently I was wrong. Now, 10.8.4 isn't a huge update. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking, but one of the bigger, things, I don't really want to call it a feature because it's more of a fix, is that one of the bigger things floating around is that they fixed the little delayed iMessage bug. And I have had that happen. Say, for example, on my iPad, I have it closed or away from the house where it's not using any Wi-Fi. Sometimes I'm sending messages on my phone, and when I finally get home and my iPad turns on its Wi-Fi and syncs, all the messages are just out of order. It's just a mess. I can't even follow the conversation. That has been a huge bug in iMessage ever since the day it was launched. And now apparently, even though it's in an Apple update or the desktop update of OS X and not iOS, hopefully that still fixes it on the iPad, or maybe that feature is coming for the iPad in X amount of months or days. So that's a big thing. Hopefully that that fixes everything from the iPhone to the iPad. It completes the circle and stop getting those stupid laggy iMessages. But let's see, some of the main features I have written down right over here. Compatibility improvements when connected to enterprise Wi-Fi networks, Exchange compatibility, fix for issues that with FaceTime calls, like international ones. There's really no features here. The only thing that they've really added is Safari 6.0.5. And as far as I know, that just improves, some security and compatibility. So really, this isn't a jump on it update. There's nothing crazy here. It's not like back in the day, like 10.6.6, where they added the App Store. It's not going to be anything that, if you say, for example, you have a Hackintosh and you just built it and you finally got everything up and running, you don't have to go out and run out and update to this, because you just run the chance that something will go wrong and that you'll have to, install some kernel extensions like that all over again. So I would say just leave it, but if you really want to experiment with it, then go for it. I personally have yet to install 10.8.4. I've been pretty busy today, so I haven't got around to it yet, but be sure to stay tuned to my YouTube channel, probably either later tonight or tomorrow, and I will be installing this update tonight. And based on how it works, the video could be a disaster and I need to do a bunch of things, or it could be very simple and maybe have to reinstall my audio. And with that said, it all depends on your hardware. I do have some older hardware here, but it should still work just fine. So Apple released 10.8.4. Go browse around the internet, and actually I do have a little web page here that shows just a few of the extra little compatibility and the updates. It's from One Place for Apple. We'll go down here. Actually, I'll go ahead and I'll zoom in a little bit. So click here, Apple's full release notes, and then if you really want to find out every single thing that this includes, they're all listed out right here. But I feel that I went over the more important ones, and the reason that I don't think you need to update. But if you really want to be up to date at all times, then it's out there for you. So there's that. Go ahead and check that out. Now, the next topic that I'm going to talk about is probably going to be most of the show, what I think is going to interest most of the people that watch my content, and that's the launch of Haswell. Haswell has finally come out. It came out, I think, the night of June 1st, so just, like this past weekend. And it was kind of a quiet launch at first, and then everyone got a hold of it. But, Intel never came out and said, bam, here it is. And basically what it comes down to is new Core i5 and i7s. There are no Core i3s yet. I think those are coming in the third quarter of this year. So they are on the horizon, but they have not shipped yet. And so here I actually have a picture of the processors here. So Core i3 Core i3 not present, but we do have Core i5 and i7. Now of the i5, we have the 4670, which is 3.4 gigahertz, and 4670K, which is also 3.4 gigahertz. This is going to be your more, gaming chip. You're not necessarily doing content production, but there's really no reason to run out and just get, like a Core i7 if you're going to be playing some of the higher end games. Just because a lot of games don't really take advantage of all the threads that an i7 offers. So if you're just a gamer, you're probably going to be fine with the Core i5, because the Core i5 has no hyper-threading. That's pretty much the only difference, or at least the biggest difference between an i5 and an i7. And that is there's no hyper-threading. The i7 has 4 cores and 8 threads, while the i5 has 4 cores and 4 threads. Now, where those threads come in handy, like I said, not with gaming. Those threads come in handy if you're doing content production. If you're working with a lot of video, or even tons and tons of layers of audio, memory and processor is going to be crucial for that. So the more threads you can throw at that stuff, the better. But gaming, not so much. Now, it's also worth mentioning that these processors use a whole new socket. If you're running an Ivy Bridge system now, you cannot just run out to the store or order one from Amazon, get it, and expect it to work, because Ivy Bridge boards use socket 1155. These processors are socket 1150, so there's totally different. There's only 5 pins difference, but that's the world. It might as well be a million, because you cannot use these processors in any previous motherboard. And the new motherboards, at least right now, there probably will be different chipsets in the near future, but right now the new boards are the Z87 chipset. And so getting back to the processors, basically what the processors include: power management. These processors aren't going to be the biggest of deal in your content production machine. Intel is really gearing these processors towards laptops or tablets or any kind of a mobile, not a big desktop machine. And the reason for that is they consume so much less power. I think I was watching a video from Linus Tech Tips, and I think that he said he's seen these Haswell chips even with an overclock running idle on a desktop machine, pulling 50 or 60 watts, which is absolutely nothing. So when you reduce your power consumption, you get much improved battery life. And so that's something that really, really matters in the mobile world, because your phone could be able to launch a spaceship at NASA, but if it doesn't have the battery for it, it's not really going to matter. And so the biggest thing with power management is lower level C states. That things that when your computer is sleeping and it's still using power, it's using a lot less than it did with Ivy Bridge or Sandy Bridge or any of the other previous generations. Also found probably one of the bigger features of these chips is the onboard graphics. I believe the desktop versions, the ones that you're seeing on the screen Right now, like these processors, these are just going to have the regular HD 4000 graphics, but like improved a little bit. But the mobile variants of these processors will have the HD 5000 graphics, and that's going to include 2 to 3 times better graphics performance. That's going to lead to 4K playback from HDMI and DisplayPort, better video performance, so you can do, say for example, 3 displays on board, which you could do with Ivy Bridge, but you're going to get a lot less lag. And if you're playing like an HD video on each one of the monitors, you're not going to see the performance degradation that you did before. And so, other than that, like the lower power consumption and the better graphics on the mobile chips, there's really not all that much of a difference. It's kind of Ivy Bridge souped up. It's not a huge, completely different chip. And that's kind of how the Z87 motherboards are too. Z87 motherboards are, think of them as an improved Z77 motherboard. As we all know, I assume that you all know from my Hackintosh series, the Z77 boards are very, very OS X friendly. Everything tends to work right out of the box, maybe except audio. But all the major, very important things tend to work right out of the box. And so Z87, although I don't have any confirmation of this at all yet, I kind of assume that once OS X supports Haswell, there'll be a lot of the same experiences there just because the platform is so similar. Now, the main differences of the Z87 platform are up to 6 USB 3 ports and 6 SATA 3 ports. So if you look at all of the other motherboards from Ivy Bridge, they all only have a maximum of 4 USB 3.0 ports and a maximum of 4 SATA 3 ports. That's now changed, and both those have been bumped up to 6. So if you're the kind of person that has a lot of very fast USB devices or a lot of really fast solid-state drives that you're always raiding and sending data to and from, that's going to be a huge benefit to you because you can take advantage of the higher speeds of all those different drives. Also, something that's very cool is the totally customizable UEFI or the BIOS. Now you can do everything. You can change what the BIOS screen actually looks like. You can add or subtract options. Say for example, in the traditional legacy BIOS, what I'm sure a lot of you guys are running, or even like a UEFI. If you want to find something very specific, you tend to have to dig through, go into your advanced settings. From there, go into those advanced settings, and you really have to drill down between all these different menus. Now with this new UEFI, they've made it very customizable in that you can move these things around. So if say for example you're a huge overclocker, and whenever you boot into your BIOS or UEFI, whatever you guys want to call it, you want to have those right there. You don't want to have to drill down into your MIT settings and then change all your voltages. You can actually take those options and put them right on your main screen and then tweak them that way. And it displays all of your real-time information on any screen that you're on. So say I'm overclocking, I can very easily just ramp it up and actually see the effects happen in real time, which is very cool. They even let you add customizable wallpapers to this BIOS. So a lot of very cool features there. One thing missing that I would still really love to see though, Bluetooth connectivity. I know it'd be kind of hard, I guess, to implement just because Bluetooth doesn't work at the BIOS level with pairing the way Bluetooth is. But that's the next breakthrough I really want to see because I currently have for my Hackintosh the Apple keyboard, and I cannot use this if I want to change my boot priority or change my overclock. I always have to get an actual USB keyboard in order to do that. And I would really love to be able to just use this at my BIOS. So I hope there's a way that in the future we could implement that. But in terms of the motherboard, that's pretty much the only main differences. Like I said, think of it as an improved Z77 board and not necessarily an entire new series of motherboards. Now also, another thing, I guess this kind of takes from the motherboard, but to support those lower C states that the processor now offers for reduced power consumption, if you really want to take advantage of that, the processor you have in your machine right now, the power supply that you have in your machine right now will not let you take advantage of that. You need to have a Haswell certified power supply in order to take advantage of those very low power C states. So something to keep in mind there. You don't need it. It's not an absolute necessity. Your current power supply will power a Haswell system, but if you really want to have that low power consumption out of the wall, then you will need to have a totally updated power supply. So something to keep in mind. The last major feature of it is that it now supports faster memory. A lot of memory that you guys have in your system now is 1600. But even with some of the Ivy Bridge boards, or like the Sandy Bridge E boards, like the Socket 2011, they supported fast memory frequencies of say 21, like I think it's 2133. I forget the exact frequency, but it's right around there. Now we have RAM that we can support on say for example like a stock speed of 3.5 gigahertz on your processor. We can now support memory that has like 3 gigahertz frequency on the memory side. So we can have very, very fast memory. But as you overclock your processor and you get higher and higher, your memory ceiling becomes lower and lower. So if you want to overclock your Haswell chip to 4.5 gigahertz, you'll probably still only get those 1600 speeds or so out of your memory. But if you want to leave your processor at its stock speeds, you can really get some very, very high performance memory, which depending on your usage and your application may or may not really affect you, but it's just something to keep in mind. I guess that's pretty much about it in terms of Haswell. Those are the main features, and trust me, we could go on all day of different things, little architecture changes that they've added, but those are really the only main things that you're going to see if you were to run out today and update to Haswell. Those are the more important things, the more everyday things. And now, like I said, Haswell and Hackintosh, it just hasn't been done yet because OS X does not support the Haswell chips yet, and that's where I'll talk about this in the WWDC section, is where I think we're going to get a lot of the hardware improvements in the Macs, is they're going to start using these Haswell chips, and that's going to allow the Hackintosh to run perfectly on these motherboards and on these processors. So definitely stay tuned for that. But now, just moving on to the last topic of the day, is WWDC 2013. And like I said in the beginning, this takes place on June 10th. That's this upcoming Monday. And of course, no one knows exactly for sure what's going to happen other than Tim Cook. And probably he doesn't even really know exactly yet. Some of the things that I think we're going to see on the software side, which this is a very safe one to say, is a new redesigned iOS 7. Now, I have my phone, actually it's in my pocket. Let's see here. This is iOS. I know every one of you guys have seen this a million times, and that's because it hasn't changed since 2007. And that's something that I think is really going to happen with iOS. It's not going to be a dramatic change, but what a lot of people are saying is that it's going to be run over with a steamroller. It's going to be, flat icons. It's going to have just like a more flat feel to it. And while that's not a bad thing, in a couple years, I think we're going to look back on that and be like, why did we do this? I kind of like the way iOS is now. Some of the skeuomorphistic, I guess you could say that if that's a word, like the Game Center, all that stuff. I'm not crazy about that. That's free to change. But everything else, just the way the app icons are now, I really don't mind them. The flat interface could look nice, and I really trust Jonathan Ive. He's the one that designed the phone I'm holding. He designed my iPad I have over here. He knows what he's doing with design. He's won countless awards, and I trust him. He knows what he's doing. And honestly, I just cannot wait to see what iOS 7 is going to bring with the new interface. I still think we're going to have the same type of interface, like the scrolling icons. I think that'll all be the same, but the way the icons look, maybe some of the animations throughout the OS will be different. I don't really know what else in terms of design that they would change, though. I'm hoping like a redesigned notification center. That'd be really nice. Other than that, I like my phone the way it is. I like how it works. It's simple to use, and it works. I don't need a totally redesigned iOS. A lot of people do just want to see change, but you have to keep in mind that a lot of people don't like change. In general, people hate change. A lot of people feel that, I finally got used to this. Why do they have to go change it? A lot of people feel that way, and you have to take advantage or take into consideration those people's feelings. And Apple has millions and millions and millions of these phones out there. There's bound to be millions and millions of people that feel that way about change. And they just bought an iPad. They like to have that seamless integration. And for those of you that you might like iOS, but you like it better jailbroken, then it's probably where you want to start looking at an Android device, because you can change it. You're free to do that. But I like the way this works. I'm all for a redesign, though, with that said. But in terms of actual features, I don't think we'll be seeing, other than the redesign, of course, I don't think we'll be seeing all that much. We're probably going to see some new lower level features. I don't think we'll be seeing a whole new phone per se. I'll get into that in a second. So, with NFC and passbook and things. But I do think we'll see better passbook integration within the phone. Right now, it's kind of just a place to keep tickets and stuff. I mean, and it'll come up on your home screen like when you get close to the place. But that's about all it does. I think that can go deeper into the OS and be more functional. But also, I think that we're going to see some improved Siri. Hopefully now it's not just, what's this movie about? Or what's the score of the game? I hope to see, much improved Siri functionality as well, because I might be in the minority, but I really do use Siri every day. Most of the time, it's just setting alarms and timers and stuff when I'm cooking. But other than that, I don't use it all that much. I would love to see that change. And it's not that I don't use it a lot, or I don't use it much because I don't like it. I really do like Siri, but I don't use it all that much or as much as I would like to, because it doesn't do as much as I would like it to. And with Google Now, how much functionality that offers in the Google app on here, I think Apple can do a lot better, and I think they will. That's about all I have in terms of iOS 7. I think those are the main changes we're going to see. Improved Siri, the redesigned interface, with that, like I said, even I don't think it needs a total redesign, but something different, something different, it's always nice. And maybe some better passbook integration throughout the OS. Now, in terms of OS 10, I really have about as much to say about OS 10. I'm very happy with Mountain Lion. It works the way that I would think it would. It doesn't crash. I like the way it looks. Everything about it is pretty nice. And a lot of people always talk about the unification between iOS and OS 10. I think we might see a couple more mobile features. I don't really know what else they could add though. They've added Notification Center. They've added the Launchpad, which I absolutely never use. I think most people don't use it. But that's OS 10. I really don't know what else they could add other than maybe Siri. Siri is like the one thing that I think would be a good addition to OS 10 that I think I would use, because I always have a microphone sitting on my desk. I'm always there to use it. Most people will have MacBooks. They always have a microphone on them. So dictation works extremely well on OS 10. I use it every single day. I think Siri would be a welcome addition as well. And in terms of what OS 10 version it would be, I'm not sure if it'll be like a 10.9 or something totally different. Maybe it won't even be 10 anymore. But I don't think now's the time for that. Mostly because, like I said, I don't think it needs it. I think it's still a really nice OS. Now, hardware, I think that this is going to be where WWDC gets interesting. I'll say, I'm going to start off with the iPhone. I don't think we're going to see a new iPhone. It's just too soon. The iPhone 5 came out in, November, right? And tomorrow, or not tomorrow, WWDC. WWDC will probably see like the first developer's preview of iOS 7. It's not going to be a release, and they're going to release those, the major OS and the major phone, they're going to release them at the same time. And it's just too soon for an entire new phone. And now Apple threw a lot of people off when it came to the iPad because it wasn't a full year. It was significantly less than a full year from when they went to the third to the fourth generation iPad. So that might have thrown a lot of people off, but I just don't think that's what's going to happen with the iPhone. In the new iPhone, whenever it does come out, I don't think we'll hear anything about this at WWDC. I would like to see NFC. It's not a deal breaker for me though. A lot of people really, really want NFC and just won't go Apple until they include it. Me, it's convenient, but I don't absolutely need it. That rhymed. And probably the same 4-inch display. I don't think they're going to go greater than 4 inches for a long time, although a lot of people really would like that, me included. But I'm still used to this 3.5 inch on my 4S. 4 inches for me is still an upgrade, and honestly, I don't have the biggest hands in the world. I do kind of call bogus on those Apple commercials. My hand is bigger than that, but I still think 4 inches is a pretty good size, and I do use my phone with one hand all the time, and I have held a Note 2. I have held a Galaxy S3, and it is a little weird to use with one hand. You try to use it, and you have to kind of balance it like on your fingertips in order for your thumb to be able to reach way over here. I don't really like that. I like having a snug, grasp on my phone and still be able to use it with one hand. So that I don't necessarily call bogus on. But Apple's commercials, they're, I would say, a little misled, but I still do use my phone a lot with one hand. So the whole 4-inch screen thing, I don't really care, because like I said, anything for me at this point would be an upgrade, because I still have that 3.5 inch screen. Now, the iPad, once again, I don't think we'll be hearing anything about the iPad at WWDC, but then again, we could, because they did break the product cycle before. So I don't know what they would add that would make the fifth generation better than the fourth generation. They've already, from the third to the fourth, they already increased the graphics performance, and that's really about all they need. I don't think they need more memory in there. I don't think they really need a faster processor in there, at least not yet. But who knows, maybe iOS 7 will be more like memory intensive or more processor intensive. Maybe they'll add these like little underlying features that require more, and who knows, maybe they'll have to get something out there for developers to test it on. I really don't know, but I would not count on any, I guess, mobile, being iPhone or iPad, new hardware released at WWDC. Now Macs, that's where I think we're definitely going to see some hardware announcements. And starting off with the MacBook Air, maybe thinner, maybe lighter. It's already very thin and very light, but you can always make it a little bit lighter. I mean, I just don't think that they need to, but it would be nice. The jump to Haswell, that's going to be crucial for every computer that Apple releases, because Apple has said it before in the past that they are a mobile company. Like X%, and it is a vast majority of the products they sell are mobile. I mean, they're not selling as many iMacs and Mac Pros as they are MacBooks, for example. And so with that said, if you're going to be a mobile company, you have to have battery life that can support that. And that's going to be very important with these Haswell chips. Like I said before when I was talking about Haswell, the dramatically increased battery life by the lower power consumption is going to be absolutely key with that. And Haswell offers some things like more USB 3.0 ports, but the MacBook Air is not going to have 6 USB 3.0 ports. It'll have probably 2. I think it already does have 2, but they're not going to use some of the features of Haswell. That's more of an advantage of the motherboards that have the 6 USB 3 and the 6 SATA. But with that said, I think Haswell, the main thing, and really probably one of the only things that we'll see, is the battery life. But that's also the most important one. We may see a little bit of a performance boost. Maybe they'll ramp up the frequencies by 200 megahertz, but it's not going to be a performance update. I don't think we're going to see a dramatic redesign of any of the MacBooks, whether it's the Pros or the Retinas. I think just having the better graphics performance and the better battery life will be enough to warrant you getting a new MacBook. Say if you've had yours for 2 years and the battery is not quite what it used to be, by jumping to a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air that has a Haswell chip in it, you're going to see crazy improvements in your battery life. And for the Retina, the Haswell is also going to be important, like I said, because of the onboard graphics. The onboard graphics is going to be crucial, because as it is right now, I've used the Retina at my local Best Buy. I've seen them in the wild, and if you're running a lot of apps and you go into say Mission Control, there is some lag there when you have the resolution boosted up. There is lag there, and a lot of people do not like that. It drove me crazy when I tested it in the store, and I did the usual test. I highlight all the applications and see how fast the SSD will open them. And I noticed that when I went into Mission Control, the first time you have to expect some lag, but as I continued to do it, I noticed the lag did not really go away. I mean, even when swiping between spaces, there was some lag there, and I didn't like that. For how much that notebook costs, it does need some better performance. And that the same can be said on the 13-inch and the 15-inch. And I believe the 15-inch even has a dedicated GPU from NVIDIA. I think it's, a 650M found in the 15-inch Pro. But the 13-inch, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that one just has the onboard, and the lag was there too. So it depends on what you have open, the things you're doing. But the improved graphics performance of the onboard HD 5000 is going to be very, very key, especially to a notebook like the Retina. And to be able to power a Retina display and say an external 27-inch display, that's going to be very crucial, especially to professionals that want a mobile setup. Now, speaking of professionals, I do think we're going to see this unicorn, this mythical Mac Pro finally redesigned at WWDC. It's been way too long, and Tim Cook last year in 2012 said that they will have something for professionals in 2013, and I think that time is now. I think rather than creating a whole new product line, why not just update the Mac Pro? The design is already freaking awesome. the inside already looks freaking awesome. Just update the components. That's the way I think Apple should go. I don't think that we'll see, like I said, a whole new product category like a Mac amateur, but I mean, it would appeal to a lot of people like myself that are doing Hackintoshes, because that's kind of where they are. It's a single processor, run-of-the-mill components, from Corsair and Roswell, thrown into a case, and good performance. But of course, Apple wouldn't do that. But to be on that level, just a single processor, and then be able to have, say, like the Mac Pro that has the dual processors and the dual GPUs and crazy setups. But so just say for a baseline Mac Pro, I think we're going to see a new Mac Pro that has the same design, but like I said, new internal hardware, new and updated components. Now that includes Sandy Bridge E. Say, for example, like what's the Socket 2011 processors. I think that we may see the jump to Socket 2011, only because I think the current Mac Pros use Socket 1366. That's actually the socket that my machine is using right now. But the Socket 2011, it just packs more performance. It packs more features. The main problem right now is with, say, the Socket 2011 Hackintoshes is that OS X just doesn't fully support it. But if it did, that would be a monster of a chip. I mean, to have native power management and have all those cores, all those threads would be really nice. And of course, right now you can get 6 and 8 core options, both of which have hyper-threading. So you can have a machine that has 6 cores and 12 threads, or 8 cores and 16 threads. And in some cases, people really go all out and get a dual CPU configuration that has, say, 24 cores it'd be 12 cores, 24 threads, or even 16 cores and 32 threads. And that right there is a real beefy Mac Pro competitor. I think if Apple just put that hardware in their Mac Pro and sold it for a price that wasn't absolutely astronomical, which they probably still will, I still think that would get a lot of professionals on board with it. Also, the addition of Thunderbolt. Right now, Apple does not have Thunderbolt on their Mac Pro at all. You can't even get like a PCI card and put that in there. You just cannot have Thunderbolt on your Mac Pro. And that's a problem because Apple is really pushing it. They even have it on the MacBook Air now. At least I'm like 99% sure. They have it on the Retina. They have it on, MacBook Pros. I mean, it's basically everywhere except their professional machine, which is honestly where it's best suited. So being able to daisy chain all your Thunderbolt drives, Thunderbolt displays, that's something that Apple needs to bring to a professional desktop computer. And so Thunderbolt is an absolute must. Also, probably the last major thing about the Mac Pro is the graphics. Right now, if you go to get a Mac Pro, I think they still include the 5770, which is still a decent, processor, or a decent graphics processor. It's still a good card, but we've moved on from that. You can do a lot of stuff on the 5770, but if they say, for example, went with an AMD Radeon from the 7000 series, like a 3 gig card, I think, yes, it was Sapphire. Sapphire released one. And also, I think EVGA did. And those are for the Mac Pro, and they work great. So Apple needs to include those as the default options. Apple needs to really get in and have more graphics cards options, ones that take advantage of today's applications. Even if they switch from AMD to NVIDIA and have all those CUDA cores, that's going to be very crucial as well. So also the last thing, not as major, but also just the ability to support more RAM out of the box. Say, for example, I think now they include 6 because it's Socket 1366, but I think they should have at least 8, maybe even up to 16 out of the box, just because computer memory is cheap nowadays and there's really no reason to not include it. So for hardware, I think that's definitely what we can see. The new MacBook Pro with and without Retina, the new MacBook Air, and a new Mac Pro. So like I said, those are, I think, what we're definitely going to see. Now, in terms of the whole iWatch and the whole Apple TV set, I don't think we're going to see any of those anytime soon or ever. I just don't think there's a market for it. The Pebble Watch is kind of cool, but I don't see it being an Apple accessory. I could be totally wrong. Let me know what you guys think about that, but I just don't see it happening. And you need to have your phone for that watch to work anyway, so I don't know. I just don't see it being an Apple product. I don't think they exist, and so tell me what you guys think about that. But that's pretty much all I have for today. So Apple releases 10.8.4. I've seen people install it on the Hackintosh, but I personally have not. So be sure to stay tuned to my channel for that. Like I said, tonight or tomorrow for a full video on that. Haswell launch, all the features of that, the new socket, the new motherboards, lower power consumption, better graphics, overall a pretty good update. And also my predictions for WWDC 2013. So that's pretty much all I have for this episode, the first episode of Tech Habit Weekly. I want to thank you guys for watching. Actually, I kind of got on a soapbox. I wasn't really paying all that much attention to the IRC, but we have some people in here, Luke Spray, Victor, Eric. Eric's awesome. Shout out to Eric. But we have some more people in there talking tech, and you should be too if you're not. So be sure to check me out next week. I'll actually be doing this hopefully with my guest next week during WWDC. So we'll be talking about the WWDC announcements as they happen. So that's going to be Monday the 10th. I believe the keynote starts at 1 p.m. Eastern, and that'd be 10 a.m. Pacific. So, usual keynote times. But like I said, I'll be streaming there. Hopefully my guest will be here, and we'll have some pretty good discussions going on then. So with that said, thank you guys very much for tuning in. As you can see right down there, I'm at CPU Kid on Twitter. Also be sure to check out RocheTechnology.com, and I'll see you back here for episode 2.